Okay, and we are live. So, hello, my name is Juno Lucita, and your name?
I'm Jay Mooers. Hi, Juno, and everybody else.
Well,
Hello.
very awesome to be meeting with you today. Maybe we can just open it up to you discussing about any of your comic books or about yourself.
Sure. Well, I've been in the comic industry for about 15 years now. I started with my own independent comic called Autumn Gray, and then from there I spiraled into working for other publishers, including Dynamite. I've done some work for Cryptozoic. I've done a little bit for DC, Star Wars. Um, and I just finished a little project for Transformers. But my passion is still my original project, which again started with my comic series Autumn Gray, and then spiraled up from that into a tabletop role play game called Fae, which is my new big project, and
That
that's
sounds
that's
really,
where I am now.
I actually would love to hear more about the board game. That is definitely a very great aspect of that.
Sure, sure. Um, Autumn Gray, which I created a world for the comic series. Autumn Gray is basically the story of a fictional town in New Hampshire where fairies and monsters have gone to hide, and how it messes with the people who live there. And I was thinking to myself, it'd be kind of fun to be the hiding monsters and stuff like that in a game. So I took that world I had built and I basically crafted a game around it where you actually play fairies and monsters hiding in the modern day human world. So you try to do everything under the radar, but it's a tabletop role play game similar to a Dungeons and Dragons type game, except I made it much easier to learn. The game mechanics are much simpler, and you can teach somebody to play in about 5-10 minutes. So it's kind of a big difference there, anyway.
That seems really fun. I love board games, tabletop RPGs. I love all of that. So that seems extremely fun. So what inspired you to get into comic book writing?
Well, I've always done a lot of illustration work. Before I was doing comics, I was working on book covers for people. I was working on murals, portraits, freelance odds and ends kind of stuff. And I started writing my own books and illustrating them. And then at one point, I was working on this novel called Autumn Gray, and it in my head, like the whole world of it was massive, and I was writing so much of it. I was actually on long drives with my day job at the time, so I would be thinking up this whole story in detail while I was driving. And then I realized I had lost track of what I had thought about versus what I had actually written. And at that point, I had some 700 pages of writing that I'd done, and I'm like, how am I gonna like find the time to like organize this and figure out what's in my head and what's on the paper here without rereading everything? And then I thought to myself, well, I'm gonna fill it with illustrations because that's what I do. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I break it down into like small chapters, and I can do it as a comic? Sure. So I just decided one day to take the novel and just take the first piece and make a comic, and I made the comic. And I wasn't in the comic industry at all. And a friend of mine who helped me get started basically took me to a free comic book day, which, if any of your listeners know, free comic book day is obviously when you. Um, oh, I'm hearing myself talk back to myself here. Sorry, it's throwing me off a little bit. The they brought me to a free comic book day at a local comic shop, and I had my little box of comics. Up till then, I'd sold it to friends and family, like you normally do when you self-publish something. And I had a whole box of them, and I sold out of them at that thing, and that's when I caught the bug. So I'm like, well, I got to make number two then. So suddenly I was working on number two, and suddenly there were people that came to that free comic book day. They're like, hey, you should come do this little Comic Con we have going on over here. You should come do this. You should come do that. I'm like, okay, So I was booking these small shows, and I was furiously trying to get number two, then number three, then number four. Working on building up the comic, and then it slowed down after 4 because at that point other people started hiring me to work on their comics. So working on my comic kind of got put on the back burner. And at that point, people had to be patient for Autumn Gray. Like they get one a year instead of I was like trying to get them out like every 2 months. And then I mean, that's where it kind of took off. I was doing a lot of work for other indie comic writers. Started doing book covers for various fantasy novels, children's books, um, just people I started meeting at these conventions. Looking for an artist, and I was their artist. So I started working on all kinds of other projects for other publishers and other people. Um, and it just grew from there. And eventually, at one point, I got the itch to play D&D again, which I hadn't done in a long time. The last time I played it was second edition, and the new edition is actually fifth edition. So it was a very different game. And I sat down and I started trying to learn the rules. And when you have a full time day job and a full time night job, it's very hard to really be able to sit down and learn the vast rules of an RPG. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you know what? No, it would be more fun for me than this. Why don't I make an RPG? Because I have so much time anyway. Let's go ahead and let's just make a game. So COVID happened, and suddenly I had this chunk of time. So I sat down and I started really working on. I took what I haven't played tabletop roleplay games since high school, and that was quite a while ago. So I took what I remembered that I liked from different systems and from video games that I liked, and I kind of meshed it together and created a system. And first time I play tested with the people, it worked really well, and I was like, I think I got something here. And so then I started working on the game. I'm still working on projects for other people. Autumn Gray is my fans of Autumn Gray have been very patient with me because I have up through 8 complete, and it's been 2 years since the last issue, and I'm hoping later this year I'll have the chance to give them number 9. But at the very least, they get more of the story in the game, so they can always pick up the game. But so the game, we launched it on Kickstarter 2 years ago, and it did phenomenal. I unlocked all kinds of stretch goals. It was fully funded within like the first day, which was it's an RPG nobody heard of, and it just resonated, and people picked up on it, and suddenly. I was selling out of books I started doing gaming conventions, and I was selling out of what I had with me, which was awesome. Uh, then over the last year, I worked on the first expansion for the game, a bunch of adventures for the game. I'm got to bring new things to people that play the game. And last year, another milestone, I ran into my first cosplayer, nobody I knew, that was dressed as one of my characters, and I'm like, oh my god! So it's just growing from there. And so this year, I launched my first big expansion for the game, which came out in January, and I'm already working on a couple new like large adventures for the game, and I'm even working on a side project, a whole nother game. It's a tabletop miniature game where you create your own little army of fey creatures, and you battle it out with other fey creatures, trying to do whatever it is you're trying to do, whether you're trying to steal the treasures or manipulate the map in some way. But yeah, we're working on that now too. So we're taking the whole franchise, the Autumn Gray, the Fey, and now we have this miniature game that we're also adding to it. So it's this whole world of stuff that everyone can do. And that's where I am now.
That's awesome. I love that so much. And if any good reason to get into comic books, that's definitely one that I think. And you did so good at networking that you just kept going into it. Did you expect to get this far, or was this just something that you just were doing for fun?
I mean, obviously, I would love it to remove the necessity for that 9 to 5 job, because if I had full time, time to really work on this stuff, I could really be producing a lot more. But in the meantime, it's growing really well. I'm going places I've never been, and I'm running into people that already know my game, Like I've been to several conventions. People are like, oh yeah, we play this, and I'm like, who are you? Like with my comic, I always felt like I knew who I was selling it to, and like it was from me to that person, and that's where it ended. But now with this game, it's like somebody bought it on a Kickstarter. I don't know the person. They sit down with their friends and they're all playing it. I don't know any of them, and then I run into them somewhere, and they're like, "Oh yeah," and I'm like, "Well, I'm the creator," and it's like, "Oh cool," you know. It's just it's a little crazy.
But that's like amazing to just see somebody like cosplaying your stuff, and that just must feel very good.
It does. It does. It helps motivate me because I mean, like anything, you get your highs and your lows, and I'm glad that it's I'm super glad that it's growing the way it is, and I hope it keeps going. I want it to be a community game. I want people to come up with their own ideas of how it can grow, and I'd like to add that to the canon of what's happening in the game because the way I think of the game is that it's happening in real time. So when you're playing it now with friends, what you're doing in the game is happening now in the game world. So like I'm slowly collecting feedback from players, and we're starting to create like a like the people who play the game are actually helping write the story of what's actually happening in the game.
I would love to play that game. Um, did you have any big influencers that helped you get more into the comic book industry?
Um, so so I don't say this very often, but I was not a comic book collector. Um, I'm still really not a comic book collector. I have a couple series that I've been collecting, but I'm back in my childhood. You didn't have the internet to be able to find all the copies of something. You'd have to go hunting for it, and it would drive me nuts. I'd want the entire story, so I'd need to start with one, and I'd want the entire thing. And if I couldn't find all of them in order to read it, I would just be frustrated. Every once in a while, I get a comic or two, and I'd be missing the one in the middle, and I'm just like, I can't enjoy the story because I don't have it all, you know. So I kind of stayed away from comics. Most of my comics growing up were actually comic strips. I was big into Calvin and Hobbes, Far Side, Garfield. Like those are my comics growing up. And then because I'm in the comic industry now, there are certain ones that resonate with me, and I've kind of like gotten into them, and I've picked them up, and now I have a whole shelf of them over there on my bookshelf. Um, but I've never, so I didn't start in comics, but since some of my big influences were actually like more other medias, like I've always been a huge fan of Jim Henson's work, especially like Dark Crystal Labyrinth and that kind of stuff. You can see a lot of stuff in my work that really reflects that kind of an aesthetic. Also things like Don Bluth's animation, Secret of Nim was a big influence for me. Like, again, you can see a lot of it in my work. There's a definite direct inspiration from that kind of stuff. Just like I love the concept of secret worlds in our world. And this whole game, this whole comic, it's all about secret worlds in the human world. Like, yeah, here's your boring everyday, but what if this was what was going on? It's that kind of thing. Oh, you're muted over there.
I forgot that I was muted. I'm sorry.
Okay. I was trying to read your
Yeah.
lips. I wasn't sure.
No, that's very awesome, the story you tell. And you talked about how there is good days and there is also challenges. And I wanted to know what has been your biggest challenge in creating comic books?
Biggest challenge in comic books would be time. It takes a lot of time to draw pages the way you want them to be. Um, when you have other projects I work on for other people, a full time day job, family, you have there's a lot of things going on. You have to balance everything. So you can never. I always feel like time is my biggest enemy with this stuff. With the game, it's getting even more difficult because I feel like I need an army. I need I'm at the point now where I'm actually looking to build a team. I've been reaching out to different people with different expertise to come in because it's growing faster than I can manage it. I need other people to help it grow. I'm at that point. Um, the challenges are mostly time, and I'm an entertainer. I've always been an entertainer. I used to do theater. I've done a lot of stuff. Doing artwork in the studio is very lonely a lot of the time. You're not talking to anybody. You're not directly seeing people react to what you're doing. Like in theater, like you make a joke on stage and the audience laughs, and it's like instant feedback. But the comic and that kind of stuff, you're sitting there going, I hope this works. And then you hand it to them, and you never get to see if it does work because you're not there when they read it. So it's a little different. But I get people that show back up to my table. I'm there next year, or they'll send me an email, and like that's where I get my feedback, and that's what motivates me to keep going. So when I have my down times, when I'm frustrated, and I'm like questioning, like, is it worth it? And then all it takes is that one person that's embraced it, loves it's made their life better, and that right there is exactly why I do this stuff. I love letting other people use their imagination. I encourage imagination. The world can be a frustrating place. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of people angry at other people. They're angry at everything, and it's like, let's just. I love creating a place where you can just use your imagination and just like it's escapism. It's about taking a break from the stresses, and let's just have fun. Let's play a game. Let's see how creative we can get and just forget about whatever's stressing you out, and let's just let time slip with some fun. And not just like I love movies, I love television. I'd love to do a Faye TV series or a movie. In fact, I'm kind of in negotiations with some people possibly doing something in the future. But I think like a game, like a tabletop role play game, it's so much more engrossing for the people playing it as opposed to sitting there and just watching something. Um, like that direct interaction with people is really what I love the most. And that alone is what really motivates me to keep this going. So I have those dark days when I'm questioning, why am I spending so much time on this thing? What's it mean at the end? And then I get an email or I run into somebody somewhere that just loves it, and I'm like, that's it. That's why.
I love that so much. And you talked about it earlier. I know that you have networked with other people. I mean, you went to events and all sort of things.
Yeah.
But do you ever like collaborate with other comic book writers?
Um, yes. So I've done several projects with other writers. I'm always doing work for other writers. I've done a lot of cover work. I'm going to be doing a lot of coloring work for a couple of big names coming up. I've done some coloring work, which is, for those of you listening that are not aware, in most comic industries, you have the artist who draws the pages, you have the inker who inks the pages, then you have the colorist who colors the pages, and then the letterer who letters the pages. That's kind of the standard for people that build a page in the mainstream comic industry. And I've done all of them, and there are obviously people better than me at all of them, I'm sure. Um, but like I find the most relaxing of those steps, as far as like just something like if I had to pick one of those steps to be the person in the group, I would choose the colorist. So I like taking something somebody else has been working on and like enhancing it. Like I love taking some beautiful line art that somebody's done. I'm like, all right, this looks great. Let's see if I can make it look like put the frosting on the cake, basically. Like you made a delicious cake, and now I'm not gonna use that like gummy fondant stuff. I'm gonna use some nice frosting on that thing. But I find it very very relaxing. It's kind of like, a lot of those adult coloring books where people love to just sit back and relax and color. That's kind of how I feel when I get to color other people's artwork. It's just sitting back, and it's very natural for me. And so I have that is something I'm moving into as far as heavy collaborations go. I'm going to be colorist for a couple different companies. On top of that, I've definitely done a lot of work where somebody else had written a comic script, and I've done all the artwork for it. We got a couple different series with a couple different people that have come and gone at this point. I have been a colorist for a couple of companies, and I've done a lot of sketch cards for a lot of different companies as well. A lot of companies will have like collector cards that people can buy. There's a big comic industry like card collecting thing, and a lot of times I'll be hired to do sketch cards. So there'll be like hand drawn cards that you can actually find inside the packets with the other cards, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of different people. Some of it I love, and some of it I'm like I get frustrated with, but that's the way it is with anything. But yeah, so I, I've been all over the place in like I think about it like the last 15 years. Like it all started with just me losing track of a novel, and that's turned into this whole other thing for me. And now it's changing again because I'm my focus is kind of slipping away from comics, and now I'm going into games. I'm just always looking for the next thing, you know.
That is kind of how I feel, but seems really awesome that you can do all these different things and make something. Like you said, you have your a world that you made, and that is very creative, and I can't wait to actually go more into that world myself.
You're more than welcome to. Yeah, so the game, like I said, the premise of the game is that it's the modern day human world, and you are the creatures that inhabit it that are not supposed to exist. And as long as the main premise of the game is as long as nobody knows you exist, then you're doing okay. Whatever it is you're doing, I mean, you can be absolutely terrible, you can be helpful, you can. Fae have their own agendas, and usually Fae agendas do not um, blend so well with human agendas. Usually, there's a severe misunderstanding between the two, um, but and that's kind of what makes the game kind of fun. You gotta throw away the whole like human mentality when you play. Like you are not the human. Like the humans are something you got to deal with, but they're not. You got your own thing going on. Whether you're playing little fairies and pixies, or whether you're playing boogies that want to steal children from the orphanage, or whether you're playing trolls that just want to eat stuff. The game has all these different kind of nuances in it. You really can be creative on what you want to be and how you want to exist in the human world. And that's what I love. People's the ideas people come up with for the game. I had a group of children that they were playing it. Their parents had been playing it, and they saw the book and they wanted to play. So they actually sat down with the kids, showed them how to play. They made their characters, and they proceeded to create a team who would go break into houses and steal the teeth from children from under their pillows before the tooth fairy would get there, and then they would extort the tooth fairy for teeth. They would like they were blackmailing the tooth fairy to give the tooth fairy the teeth. It was just something they came up with, and I'm like, that is hilarious. So they just basically steal the teeth first, and then you want this? Oh, it's going to cost you.
That's a great concept when you're doing that. And
Yeah.
honestly, the game is great for people who want to be mythical creatures and don't want to be humans, because there is
Yep.
a good
Right.
amount of them out there.
Oh yeah, there is. Yep. And so like most games, people you build your heroes, and you're there to save the day and save the world. And in this, you can be there to save the day, save the world. You might be saving the world from other fake creatures that are going to do something terrible, or you can be the terrible creatures. It all depends on what kind of a game you guys want to have. You can be the villains. You can try to destroy the world. Go for it.
Personally, I love the villain rather than a hero. Just
I've
sounds way
always,
more fun.
yeah, I've always been a big fan of it. I mean, like I said, like a lot of my big influences were definitely darker children's things, like Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, Secret and M, And what I loved about them were the villains. I don't know, they always have the best laugh. They seem so happy until they lose. And I
Did
think
you
a lot
put
of
any
times,
research
oh,
into
for
it?
the
Like,
game,
yeah.
big time. So I researched, and there are tons of there's fey folk, like there's fairy and monster folklore everywhere in the world, and there is so much of it. So with the initial game, I stuck with like traditional, like big name things. Like you can be different kinds of elves or different kinds of fairies. You can be gnomes. You can be goblins. You can be trolls. Like things people are more familiar with. But I do have some odd things in there. Like you can be yakshas, which are from Buddhist beliefs. You can be mogwai. Not the Gremlins movie Mogwai, but the actual Mogwai from Japanese folklore, which are little hairy, nasty guys. But you can be them. You can be let's see what's some of the other ones. There's a couple of Cluricons, which are another. They're similar to leprechauns, except they instead of being green, wearing green and being about luck and stuff like that, they wear red. They guard wine houses and they hate the clergy. But one thing I did was I researched the origins, all the races in my game. I have a paragraph with each race talking about where they come from folklore, and they're all based off of original folklore as opposed to being based off Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons. All these games have their own version of stuff, and I didn't want to just copy their versions. I actually went back to like where they really came from origin, like as far back as we can find anyway, because a lot of these stories were never even written; they were just passed down through oral traditions. But I had a lot of fun researching the history of a lot of different races, and there are so many more. I can type in any any town in the world, and I can actually start finding all these different kinds of folklore. So it's really like a Pandora's box of creatures to play. So like the first expansion for the game, which came out this year, I actually added another like 28 races that I just found fascinating, that I found in different cultures. I focused more on like some of the stuff that was like up in the Himalayas, and I focused on a lot of more obscure creatures. And it never stops. Like I could sit down right now and probably find another 20 creatures, like nice and quick. I just pick a theme. Like, all right, we're gonna do a book on strictly on water. Like all these creatures live in water, and I could just sit down and make a book of fey creatures that are in water that now you can play in the game. And I would research the folklore for them and everything. So it's astounding how much is out there, and I love looking into different cultures, because we all around here we all know the traditional European stuff. We know the the Rome, like creatures from Greece and Rome, and there are staples that we know, but there's so much from other cultures that I had no idea about, and I've been in this kind of stuff for a long time, and I'm constantly just discovering new things, and a lot of times people come up to me at conventions and like, oh, can I play a? Recently, someone was like, can I play a red cap? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, red cap. Let me look that up. It's a type of goblin, and I learned about where it's from, and I looked at like what they believe they know how to do. So I was able to like create like racial abilities for it, and I'm like, boom. So I have an expansion coming up, which is going to be just a book on goblins, and it's all different kinds of goblins, and it's going to get into like far more detail, just specifically goblins. And one of the things in there to play, red cap. There it is. So, but they're like just type in goblin, and you're going to find 10,000 different kinds of goblins. Like it doesn't stop. So it's just a matter of picking out stuff from the pile and being like, let's put this in the book, let's put that in the book, let's put that in the book, but keeping it all cohesive, making it all make sense together, and that's the part where I have to, like, it's one thing to find the folklore for all these creatures everywhere online and research, but then finding how they all will work together in the game is another step in it. But I have a lot of fun doing it. Another example, so I have the Goblin book coming up, and I have a Gnome book coming up. And the Gnome book gets into, again, how the family in the original game. I don't really get into a lot of depth of how families function and how they pass down the names to each other, and the way family, the way the typical gnomes in my game live. So I actually researched gnomes. So I have gnomes are originally these little hairy monsters that lived in mines and killed miners. They try to make deals with them and to escape, and if they didn't fulfill them, the mine would collapse in on them. So those are like original gnomes, but then like people always picture the gnomes with the pointed hats and beards and friends with animals. So I actually wrote up that gnomes liked this depiction people had of them, so they've learned that people picture them this way, so they're trying to be that way because it's like, oh, that sounds like fun, let's do that. So it's like humans kind of rewrote what gnomes were, and then the gnomes kind of saw it and went, yeah, let's do that. So it kind of like works in reverse that way. It's like so they're trying to mimic what humans think they're supposed to be instead of the other way around. So it's fun, like finding ways to take different concepts and making them blend together and work in one world.
Yeah, I myself, I love mythical creatures, so this is all very fun and fascinating to me. Um, Probably know this question, but do you ever have like a creative block?
Yes. So I had already mentioned that like time is the toughest thing. So it's not so much block, it's what do I want to do now. It's like I have like I perfect example this weekend. I'm quite busy, but I have like this one chunk of time. I'm gonna have like 6 hours where I could forego sleep, forego mowing the lawn, and let's work on something. I'm like, which thing? Like it's something I'll have time to work on something Fey, and I'm like, we were just discussing. Do I try to get the Goblin book done? Do I try to get the Gnome book done? And I have some other adventure stuff I'm working on. Do I work on one of those? So it's not so much block. It's more of just focus. It's like I want them all done. So it's like, well, which one am I have to ignore two of them and do one of them. It's like, which one should I do first? I have to make up my mind, otherwise I'll just get to that time block and I'll get nothing done.
I actually have ways that I get around that. If you have like somebody that you talk to a lot, ask them their opinion.
Yeah.
And if you're not happy about their opinion, then you don't want to do that. And you already know in your heart what you want to do.
When
And
I
it literally helps it.
Yep, yep. When I first started doing the comic, the friend of mine that helped me go to Free Comic Book Day and got me started, we would meet once a week because they were also starting their own comic as well. And so we decided that we would give ourselves homework assignments and we would meet once a week. So I knew that I had to have what I told them I'd get done by the time we met next week. So it created, like, because otherwise, I mean, in the creative world, you can be thinking about something forever. You never get it down on paper. You never it never becomes real. And the only way I could force myself when I started to make it real was to hold myself accountable. And the best way was I was holding someone else accountable, and they were holding me accountable, and we both managed to get our comics out, which was great. And there are times now when I kind of wish I had somebody that I was like, all right, so next week I have to have this. Like it's almost like I'm assigning my own projects to myself, and you're going to make sure I got it done, kind of a thing. But so like it's usually not so much I'm looking, and then of course I want feedback. So like what we would do is like we both get our things done and we exchange them, and then by the next week, not only do we have the new things we have to get done, we have to have looked at each other's things and help them along, kind of thing.
It's
Um,
actually a term for that. And it's literally simple. It's called accountability buddy.
yep, that's a good way to put it. Yep.
And yeah, I have heard that it helps a lot of people. I haven't tried it yet for myself, but it's definitely helped a lot of people to keep forward with their projects. Okay. Can you tell us about any tools or software that you use to create your comic books, like if you're illustrating or writing?
Mhm. So I hand draw. Um, I have a nice big digital screen right here. And I got my digital pen. I can draw on it. But I love the feel of pens and paper. I feel like accidents happen, and I feel like that's part of the character on paper. Um, I feel like when I do a very loose inking style. Like it's very sketchy. I don't use like solid lines. It's very if you ever look at any of my stuff, which I'm sure you have, um, there's the line work. The line work itself is not solid, um, but I have a lot more fun drawing by hand. So what I typically do is I will when I'm working on a comic, I will draw the page on a nice big piece of paper, and then I will scan it into the computer, and then I will color it, or and add my words, and possibly adjust like, oh, this should be bigger and that should be smaller. I can tweak it digitally, but I still prefer to do the initial drawing by hand. But then when I scan it in, I typically use the I've had an old copy of Photoshop Elements, which is like one third of Photoshop, but it's all I've needed. But I use that to color, and then I use a couple of other programs to throw my words into it, and organize it into a PDF book format. But yeah, I usually just use Photoshop. I know a lot of people use other programs, and I once in a while I peek at videos of people using full Photoshop and they're doing all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, that'd be kind of cool if I had time to learn it, but I'm too busy making things, so it's hard to like stop and relearn how to use a new program. I'm just powering through with what I have. At some point, if I have more time, I'll love to like sit back and learn new programs. But in the meantime, I will continue to just use my Photoshop elements and my pen and paper.
That's great. I've heard plenty of people who love hand drawing as well. Personally, I like digital better. It's just easier for me, but I do like seeing hand drawn stuff.
Yeah.
Very
One
nice
thing
to
that
look
helped a
at.
lot with, so I have been doing some drawing digitally, and I got a film to put over the stylus, so it actually feels more like paper when I'm drawing on it, which helps. Um, because I feel like, the grain of the paper kind of can sometimes take control, and I like that. I like the organicness to it, as opposed to, I mean, and there are lots of beautiful all digital things, and but it's I always struggle with it. I feel like I can get so much more detail and depth and character in something when I draw it on paper instead of on the tablet.
That makes a lot of sense. Um, and you talked about making this world. Can we maybe talk more about how you do world building?
So, I created this world for the comic Autumn Gray, and when I talked about before how I had written, hundreds of pages, and I had been thinking about probably thousands of pages. I was basically building this world. Um, so when I started creating the comic, the story, it's coming out great, but the whole time I'm like, it takes so long to tell a story in the comic, and I feel like there's so many more stories in this world I've created than what this comic is just going to cover. So I was like, well, I've created a world. Now, what if I just made it so people could create their own stories in it, you know? And then I could create stories much quicker. I could sit down at a table with a group of people and create the story right there, instead of having to like spend 3 years working on a comic to tell the story. And then it's something that like we all experience together. So they're creating the story with me, and how before I said, it can be very lonely in the studio. Telling stories around a table with a bunch of people, it's so not lonely. We're building this together. And it's really 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 fun. So I think like I am definitely shifting. I will finish the Autumn Gray series. Don't worry, fans. You will get the rest of Autumn Gray. But I am definitely shifting far more into the game world. I love make telling stories with people. I used to love choose your own adventure books when I was a kid, and I feel like games like this are the ultimate choose your own adventure, where you can't peek ahead at both of your page options and say, "Ooh, that one I die. I won't pick that one."
That does sound very fun and creative at the same time. It sounds like a great time to be doing what you do. Do you know of any misconceptions that you might get when you're doing either your comic books or your game?
So a lot of times when I'm explaining the game to people, I'll talk about how it's easy to learn. Like the rule system is easy. A lot of people assume that means the game is dumbed down. You know what I mean? It's not. The whole idea is the way you roll the dice in the game is easy. There are still thousands of different things you can be doing by rolling the dice. The easy part is just understanding how the dice work. I think that one of the misconceptions I have when I'm pitching the game to people at my table is, I tell them you can learn this game in 5 minutes, so they're thinking, oh, so it's just it can't have much to it. It certainly does have tons to it. In fact, there's still and I realize there are still things in the game book that I haven't even play tested because there's just so much. We've tried to cover as much as we can, but at some point you have to get the game out to people. But yeah, there's still powers that people haven't really messed with in the game, or there's still some races I don't think I've had anybody play yet that are in the original book. So it's it's huge, and there's tons in it, so the misconception is that it's simple to learn, but it's no by no means is it a small game. So that's one thing people sometimes get a little confused with when I tell them it's easy to learn. It doesn't mean it's a small game. It just means that it's easy to learn. Um, and then as far as the comic goes, um, misconceptions with the comic. I think a lot of people just assume that I've stopped working on it. I assure everybody that I have fully laid out the entire next issue of the comic. It has been sitting in a notebook, semi not forgotten but semi ignored since I started working on the game. I assure everybody I will have it out. I One of my goals this year is at least to get it moving forward again, because the game is flourishing. But the tricky thing is, if the game is taking off, is I can't stop working on the game to work on the comic. So it's another thing I have to balance with everything else I'm doing. But it will be there, I swear. And I'm not just talking like uh, Martin there with his Song of Fire and Ice books. How he keeps swearing he's finally going to finish those things, and I don't know if he ever will.
That's great. What was I going to say? Sorry, I had something I was going to say, but it just slipped my mind.
Oh my
Um,
god.
do you use social media at all to help like posting with your comic book, your games to get the word more out there? And does it work at all?
Yeah, so I do not use it as much as I should. Again, it's time. Like I could spend time promoting it all evening, or I could spend time working on it, and I choose to spend time working on it. Sometimes that's probably not the best idea because I should probably be more places with the game. The game itself is solid. It's here, but I'm already like trying to work on the next stuff for the game. And meanwhile, like people like my wife is like, hey, you know what? You should probably stop worrying about the next thing for the game and let's get the game more places. Let it's just I'm not a fan of social media. I mean, here I am on social media right now, but I I feel like I need a social media person. That's so when I said I need to build the team, I need people specialized. Um, I need somebody that loves to do social media. I would love to have a Discord set up. I barely know how to use it at all. I struggle to say hi to other gamer people on there, and that's about it. Um, I use Facebook probably more than anything. I use Instagram. I have a Twitter account. I don't think I've posted anything there in 4 or 5 years. Um, I had a Deviant Art account where I was sharing a lot of the stuff, but then they went AI crazy, and I left that. Um, I I have a TikTok, and I was really intending. I have a puppet named Simon who goes to conventions with me. Everybody you ever see me at convention knows who he is. He heckles people. He's kind of like the mascot of Faye. In fact, I could go grab him if you want. But he he I was intending on doing TikTok. He was going to do TikTok challenges. So basically a monster, like Faye monster, doing TikTok challenges. Like when they had the milk crate thing where they're supposed to climb up and not fall. Like he was going to be mocking people and hopping up on them, stuff like that. I was gonna have fun with that, but it just I haven't had the time, and it's just it, I get frustrated doing things like that. I would love to have somebody who's ready with a camera and ready to. I don't even take pictures at conventions. Every convention I go to, I say to myself, I'm like, I only take one picture when I first get there of my table set up and say, "Come on down, here's my table." And I don't take any pictures. I watch other people; they'll take pictures with people who buy the books, all this stuff, and it helps drum up social media. And by the time I get to the end of the weekend, I'm like, oh, you know what I forgot to do? Take pictures, post things. Didn't happen at all, and it's just I'm always like that. I need someone who I need a social media person. It makes me sound like I'm a celebrity. I need my own social media person. It's just social media is a full time job in itself, as you know, here with your podcast and stuff. Um, so I can't add another full time job to what I'm already doing. So until somebody reaches out to me and is interested in being that person, you're gonna have to settle with pictures of my table before a convention, and I will update people when Kickstarters are coming up to the best of my ability. It's the best I can do with it.
That is totally fair though. It's a lot to juggle a lot of things. I definitely know I'm somebody who wants to do literally everything.
Me too. I would
And
love to do all of it. Yeah.
yeah, and you don't want to get burnout because that is definitely something that you can experience if you're just trying to do multiple things at once.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what ends up happening is you're not getting anything done, or you're not doing anything
Mhm.
to the level it should be at. Um, Sometimes when I feel stretched out, like I've had art projects where I've kind of phoned it in, and I'm not proud of it, and it's just you just didn't have the time, didn't have the mental capacity to really give it what you wanted to give it. And but a lot of times people love it, and you're like, okay, good, then we're good. Okay, I'm just gonna forget this ever happened. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. See you later.
Also, I would have loved to see your puppet, and I think
I'll
so
grab
would
him. He's
the
right over
audience.
here. He's right over here. I'll get him. Hey, you don't want to see me over there, huh? All right, I'm coming. Here I come. Oh my god. Let me get over here.
Oh my God, that's great.
Guys, how we doing? I'm Simon. Nice to meet you. I'm the Star Fae. Hello out there in interweb world.
Did you make him?
No. Bill Diamond. He's a puppeteer from Jim Henson Studios. He's a friend of mine. He made him. But he's based off of one of my characters from my comic, who has now become the mascot of Fae. Yeah, I'm everything. Hi.
I love it so
On the camera.
much.
Here we go. There you go. Now you can watch me. How we doing? Hello.
I love how white his eyes is and everything. Like how he is built is just amazing.
Well, thank you. It also helps that he's got a fan going on up here, so my hair's like getting all wispy in the wind. Yeah, so like at conventions, I'm yelling at people when they're going by the table. I got friends and enemies. It's good times. Yeah.
Definitely sounds like fun, and like you know how to have fun, and you're very entertaining.
That's what it's all about. And people going to conventions are there to have fun, or at least they should be there to have fun. And that's what I love, making sure people coming by my table are going to have some fun. If you want to get the game while you're there, great. It helps me. But I'm more interested in making sure everyone's having fun. Like come play the game at conventions, have fun, play it. If you love it, bring it home, play it with more people. Tell me about you having more fun with it. All right, Simon, you're gonna go up here.
So how often do you go to conventions?
Right now I'm probably averaging one every 2 to 3 weeks. Some of them I travel pretty far for, but most of them I try to keep them in a I can drive there. Like say it's a Saturday show, I can get up Saturday morning, be there for the show on Saturday. And then if it's a full weekend show, if I got to get a hotel, I get a hotel. But I'm a guest at a lot of shows, so they actually provide hotel and table at those ones, which makes it easier to travel. Um, but I'm starting to look at shows where I may have to fly. The problem with that is bringing product with me, because books are not light, especially rule books. Um, Comics are a little lighter. You can bring like a small box of comics with you to a convention and fit them in your carry-on, and you can make it work. But with the game books and stuff, oh, they're heavy. So so if I did a travel one, it's gonna be have to, like, if I had to travel to say California or something, I would either have to ship a box ahead of time over there, or I would have to drive. But that would take a lot of time.
I think Comic Cons are very fun. I go to them pretty often. I'm never a vendor, but I do enjoy conventions.
I don't
Um,
know where you are, Juno. So where are you in the world?
I'm
Just a
in Buffalo, New
general.
York.
Okay. So have you been to like Saratoga Comic Con or any of those ones, or?
Um, no, I have several that I go to, but there's some that I just repeatedly go to. Like there's one called VillaCon. I have been there every year so far. I'm
Hmm.
going to more and more Comic Cons as it is now. I really enjoy them, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good. I think the closest one to you that I do is probably Mid Hudson Comic Con, um, which is in, I always forget what the name of the town is. Shame on me. I can peek on my little calendar here. Tells me where I'm going. Mid Hudson. When are you? Mid Hudson. Mid Hudson. First weekend of August, and Mid Hudson is in. Cheating. I have my computer open next to me here, so I can I can take a peek at where it is. I just forget what the town's called. It is in Poughkeepsie. So I don't know how far away that is for you.
I'll have to check. If I had way more money, I would definitely be traveling more to more Comic Cons. Because there is or not even just Comic Cons, but conventions in general. There is so many good ones out there that I would love
There
to go to
are
one day.
there. I mean, if I had the time, I mean, without even leaving, like without even getting out of driving for the day distance, I could probably find a show every weekend. Like there are all different sizes, all different kinds of shows everywhere. It's great. It's great when you do this kind of stuff that you can find places to do it everywhere. Um, it's just hard to pick. A lot of times I just at this point, like, I have certain shows that I do all the time. Certain promoters that run their shows are always inviting me to certain shows. I'm a guest at. So being a guest is great because, like I said, they help me out. I don't have to pay for anything up front for those. I just a lot of times I'll do like exclusive artwork for certain conventions. I'll do some sort of a feature for the convention itself. In exchange, I get a free space, which takes a lot of the pressure off. But then other ones, I there are a couple that I spend a lot of money to do, but it's to get me in markets that I don't normally see. Um, for instance, I do a large gaming convention in DC, and this will be my second year of it. It's expensive. It ends up I don't expect to come back having made more than I spent. But it's about networking. It's a whole new circle of people. There's people that internationally come to that show. So people leaving that show go everywhere in the world. So it's become a very important spot for networking. So I don't do a lot of social media, but I do a lot of in-person media. Let's put it.
All right, and sadly, we are ending our time, so I do have two more questions left. First question is, do you have any advice for anyone who's aspiring to either be a comic book writer, comic book artist, or a game designer?
Yeah. So right across the board, um, when you decide what you want to do with it, you need to share it. That's I think the hardest thing for any creator, because you put your heart and soul into something, and it took me a long time to start sharing my work with people. Like I spent a good 15 years after college doing lots of artwork, doing lots of writing, and it's still on the shelf over there, and the only one who's ever seen it is me. It's so one thing I recommend is share it with people. It's the best way to get feedback. It's the best way to be motivated, but also be ready for criticism. If you there are some people that are just going to poop on things no matter what, but if you have people that you respect their opinion, respect it. Then if they see something, they're usually trying to help you. Don't be afraid of having to change what you're doing to make it work better for whatever reason. But number one, I would say start creating something. If you love creating it, just create it. I mean, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But if you want to share it, then obviously you're putting your heart out there for people to do things with. So you definitely want to make sure you get feedback from trusted places first, and then I recommend building a fan base. One thing I did not do with my comic, which in retrospect probably would have helped, um, is built like a lot of times when people I say start posting bits and pieces of your comic somewhere. Like post something once a week. Get people so that it becomes like you. That way, when you start, say, a Kickstarter, when you're ready to fund your book or whatever it is you're going to do with it, um, at that point you'll already have a collection of people that are ready for it. You already have a fan base. You're not just starting completely cold. Um, the internet is there for us to use. There's a lot of free places to promote. And after I just described that I'm very bad about promoting myself on these free services, I know a lot of people that have really flourished because of that. So I recommend it highly. It doesn't cost anything to do. If you want to get your stuff out there, you can get it out there for free. You can sell it digitally. It doesn't cost you anything printing that way. The world nowadays, it is easier to get things out there than it's ever been before. That's good and bad. It means you have more competition than you've ever had before in whatever it is you're doing. But it also means that you don't have to get an agent. When I started trying to do this stuff, like I was told, if I don't get a literary agent, like publishing places aren't going to look at my stuff, anything. So it was just completely dead ended. And it was very discouraging because then I would try to reach out to publishing agents and getting them to look at it like, no, we're good. We got plenty of clients. No, no, no. It just, you get rejected, and it's kind of devastating. But nowadays you can be your own agent, and you can just find yourself an outlet and start sharing it. And when you think like, I got like 300 people that look at this every week when I post it. if I did a Kickstarter and say 30 of those people pledged to the Kickstarter to buy the book, that'd be enough to pay for the book printing. It's that kind of thing. Like, you just start realizing that, like, that you can, when you're ready to make the leap, you just be ready for one thing. All right, I just this occurred to me when I launched my first Kickstarter. I was launching. It was the Kickstarter for the trade of Autumn Gray, the first 5 issues. Um, my Kickstarter did terrible. It was it was a little devastating at the time. I had a lot of people that were totally like on board, and then suddenly when I launched it, they were MIA. The first Kickstarter I did for it failed. It sucked the wind out of me. It took me about a year to climb back out of the hole I'd put myself in and start making the trade anyway. At that point, I'm like, well, I'm moving forward anyway. I have fans, just not enough of them to pay for the book. I'm going to find a way to do this. And then after that, it flourished. And honestly, with the game, now that I have this whole world to play in, the comic is selling better than ever, because it's like, oh, cool. So I have this game. And now here's a book that takes place in the world of this game. Cool. I'm going to grab that too. So suddenly, like, the two things together are just becoming a whole new beast. So even when you get discouraged, even when you don't think anybody's interested, um, just, if you have fun doing it, do it. Ultimately, that's the goal. Obviously, it'd be great if we all lived in the world where we could all live off of our passions. Um, but even sharing your passion with others should be enough to motivate you. If it's all about the money, then that's the wrong passion for this kind of thing. If it's all about money, there are jobs that nobody wants to do that will pay very well, and you can go do one of those if it's just about the money, because then you'll get that money. When you do something, a passion project, you have to bear in mind there are lots of people that have similar passions, and there is a lot of competition for. I mean, like, you look at Kickstarter and you see like 10,000 different projects on there, and they're all hoping to be the passion project that catches your eye. And it can be very intimidating and very daunting and very discouraging when you peek at one of them and they're getting, $800,000, and like, you just watch their number going up and up and up and up, and you can't compare yourself to that. Everybody's projects are different. Everyone's in different stages of their work, and it's really about your personal journey. Um, so don't be discouraged. I even forget where we started with this question. I think it was about what kind of advice I had for people that were starting. Um, don't try to. Another thing a lot of people do is they'll try to just copy what somebody else has done. Like, well, superhero comics are the most popular, so I'm going to turn this into a superhero comic. I'm going to make it like Hulk. I'll just say. And it's like, well, if that's what you want it to be, then that's fine. But if you're doing that because you think that's what's going to make it sell, and now it's not what you want it to be, then you got a problem. Yeah. I always advocate. We live in a world of indie. The indie comic is huge right now. It's the perfect time to make anything the way you want to make it. And if people love it, then fine. If they don't, then fine. You made something you love, and that alone is the best kind of art out there. I buy comics from people at conventions. I have a ton of them that I haven't even read, but I bought them because the people who made them love what they did, and I can feel that when I talk to them. And just that alone, I'm like, I am supporting you. I am buying this comic. It is going. I want you to sign it. It's going in my special shelf here of my passion projects, and I love it. I love when people love what they do, and I will always encourage people to do that. It's one of the nicest things you can do out there. So,
That was excellent advice. Thank you. And the last question I have is where can we buy your products at?
so you can go to my publishing, my own little publishing house is called Eden Park Tales, as in Tales. So you can go to EdenParkTales.com. And I have a little web store there where you can buy my game, you can buy my comics, you can buy artwork, stuff like that. You can also, there's a link there to Drive Through RPG, which is the a huge digital gaming database where you can purchase digital versions of the game, which saves you money if you'd like to purchase the game. You get a PDF download, and then you can print it up, or you can use it right there on your computer. The nice thing about the PDF is any ability you're using, you can type it right in the search engine, and it pops right up on the screen, so you're not flipping through a book. I'm old school though. I draw by hand, and I like a book. Um, I can actually show you the rule book. I have one floating right here. So this is the Fey rule book right here, and this character is the one that somebody was cosplayed as at a convention. Um, but it's a nice hardcover. It's everything you need to play the game. This is everything you need for players, game masters who run the game. This is the one and only book you need. You need this and some dice and some pencils, and you got everything you need to play. But then there are expansions. I had mentioned the expansion that came out this year. That would be this right here, They've Forgotten, which is about more obscure creatures that were basically abandoned by other fey creatures that exist in the human world. It has a lot more fun, juicy stuff to throw into the game. But those are available on Eden Park Tales. You can also reach out to me on social media. You can see the way my name is spelled here, Moers. That is me. If you go on Facebook, you go on Instagram and type in Jay Mooers, I will pop right up. I am very willing to talk to people about anything. I love hearing about people's adventures in Fae, and I'm very interested in going to your local gaming shops, even as long as there's somewhere I can get to in a day. I would love to bring the game with me and show everyone how to play. I've been doing that a lot too when I don't have conventions. So please, everybody, I am not on social media as much as I should, as I already admitted. But if you message me, I will definitely respond right away. I direct human contact is my best medium, and instant messenger is definitely a great way for that. So is Instagram. So please, I would love talking to people interested in the game. I would love to share it with you, and thank you very much for having me on here.
No problem. I had a very fun time chatting with you. I'm very grateful that we got to meet today, and I also think your shirt is cool.
Oh, thank you. My wife
It's
dresses
very
me
nice.
well. Yeah, there goes Pluto. Oh, it's over there. I'm not used to it's not a mirror image on the screen. I turn one way and it's always the wrong way. So
And thank you to let's see, Grimlock Stonehammer over here for commenting on
yeah.
things.
Hi
I
Grimlock, how
appreciate it.
you doing? Grimlock and he's got a puppet goblin that likes to hang out with Simon, so they do shenanigans together. He's constantly trying to
Awesome.
get me on social media more, so he's been an awesome supporter. He's a great friend. And then I think the other
I
one that
love
was saying
that.
hi was James, right? A little
I
before,
I think so.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you to you people for their being awesome supporters. We love supporters over
Yeah,
here.
I have a great I've met a great circle of people with the game in the comic, and they're my family, and I'm grateful for them every day, and I wish I could show it to them more, but like whenever they do charity things, I'm there, and without them, I wouldn't be where I am. So thank you guys, thank you.
Hey, well, goodbye to live. Thank you for meeting with me today.
You're welcome. Bye
And
everybody out there. Thanks for watching.